Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
On your Daily Detroit for Friday, April 10th, 2020.
Statewide, coronavirus deaths have increased, posting a huge jump overnight.
More details are coming out about the mess at Sinai Grace Hospital in Detroit.
An update on the progress of field hospitals in the area.
A historic stadium that was home to Negro League Baseball gets a critical grant.
And much more. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Let's get right after it.
First, the top line numbers. 205 people died overnight in Michigan, a 43% jump, bringing the death total to 1,281 from the coronavirus. So much for signs of a possible reprieve. Nearly 22,800 cases of coronavirus have been confirmed in Michigan. More than 10,000 of those cases are in Wayne County, but it's important to note that there are cases across the state.
There's news concerning self-employed workers, freelancers, gig workers, independent contractors, Uber drivers, low-wage workers, all of that. All of them can now apply for federal pandemic unemployment assistance starting Monday. Beginning at 8 a.m., you can visit michigan.gov/UIA. Newly eligible workers will need to provide proof of income in the form of W-2s, 1099 tax forms, or pay stubs. Payments of $600 are on top of the standard maximum $362 in weekly state unemployment benefits. They'll be received as soon as April 20th, assuming you do the biweekly certification process. The state says eligible workers have already started receiving the $600 federal set amount in addition to the regular benefit they were previously eligible to receive from the state. Since March 15th, more than 800,000 Michigan workers have filed for unemployment benefits. That's an increase of more than 5,000% over a 3-week period. All right, Jer, Mayor Mike Duggan had a news briefing of his own today. You've been keeping tabs on what's going on in the city of Detroit. What did he have to say today?
Well, Sven, I want to start at the fairgrounds because there are a lot of things happening at that fairgrounds testing site, which is really proving to be a big piece of positive news that is helping the city go forward. Duggan says that the call center for appointments has been overwhelmed lately. I know that I've been hearing reports of that myself. It's supported by extra Quicken Loans capacity. So folks who are usually on the phones dealing with mortgages, refinances, all that kind of stuff, well, they've been swung over to help with this call center. Well, it turns out there's a lot more mortgage payment adjustments and requests for that are coming in right now.
Sure.
And so those resources are getting split up in multiple directions. So in order to help with the fairgrounds load as testing increases, Quicken has hired 8 people to handle these testing calls. So that's some good news and should relieve that backlog. Another thing that's important is that the Wayne State University School of Medicine is coming on to possibly get to more than 1,000 tests a day. And so we've talked about this in a previous show of a goal of 1,000. Now they want to do more than 1,000 tests a day that are happening at the fairgrounds. A footnote to that, the mayor also asked if there are any Abbott Labs machines that independent doctors or others have sitting around the testing platform for these 15-minute tests. They are running the machines they have right now all day, every day, and they're getting concerned about them. So a machine or two to use for 3 or 4 weeks, the mayor said would be very helpful.
Oh, that's good. I mean, we medical experts say there's still nowhere near enough testing being done, and testing is going to become critically important once we get through this in order to, determine when it's safe to open up the economy and let people out of their houses and stuff. Okay, so moving on. What's this I hear about the city starting to roll out hazard pay, according to the mayor?
Yeah, this is an idea that's happened in some other cities. So here's what's happening. Starting Monday, first responders and public-facing employees will get $800 a month extra for COVID-19 pay or hazard pay. Most employees, how this is going to happen is that they will get about a $5 an hour bonus through the time that this emergency order is happening by the governor.
All right. And what else did the mayor have to say today, Jer?
Well, there's a few more I want to talk about, and I'll try to be as quick as possible. A number of Detroit Water and Sewerage employees have contracted COVID-19, specifically those who were out in the field turning the water back on for residents. So one of the facilities is going to be closed for cleaning. Now, the mayor says that they've gotten through that backlog of turn-ons. I know there's some activists who would disagree with that, but I'm just presenting the facts as we see them. DPD Chief James Craig seems like his battle with the coronavirus has been somewhat successful, and he is waiting for clearance to come back to work full time. Another interesting thing is that police officers in the city are now carrying and offering free masks. They're not mandating that you take them, but in every cruiser, if they see you without a mask, they might roll up and ask if you want one.
That's good.
Yeah, they're saying that masks are more of a thing. I will say on my shopping trip earlier today, I saw more masks out in the city, which was a very good thing than I have in the past. The Riverside Park Skate Park has been shut down. Now, the city had talked about shutting down parks across the board. The mayor says now that won't happen, that there has been more compliance. But the Riverside Park Skate Park will be shut down because there was a group of people that just keeps violating the order. He doesn't want to have to send cruisers out there anymore. So that's going to be shut down for the duration here. And then another thing that I thought was interesting is that police are seeing groups of 10, 11, and 12-year-olds kind of wandering the streets right now. And the mayor is saying that that's not really a police issue, but parents and caregivers need to keep a little bit better track of their kids. Something important to note that although we're not seeing tons of cases with the very young, they can still very easily be carriers and spreaders of coronavirus. And so it's important to keep tabs. And of course, watch your kids. It's just important to know where your kids are. And then finally, and this is something that got reiterated, which tells me the bells are being sounded, that a $100 million budget shortfall is coming. They're already making decisions on what's going to have to be cut after the immediate crisis. He noted that Senator Gary Peters and some others are starting to work on some bills to maybe get some relief for cities and states. But right now, there is no relief for local municipalities. So local cities across the country are going to see drastic cuts in the coming months unless something happens.
Well, Jer, I need a stiff drink after hearing that, but thanks for that rundown. The Detroit News published a harrowing story Thursday about what's happening inside the Detroit Medical Center's Sinai Grace Hospital on the city's northwest side. The news spoke with several nurses and doctors, one of whom described a, quote, war zone. He described patients dying in hallways because there was no room to admit them with beds, and nurses scrambling in search of body bags. About 5 patients die from COVID-19 every 12-hour shift at the hospital, and that's reportedly one of the highest mortality rates in the nation. That death rate has apparently attracted the attention of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which had a conference call with the hospital recently. The story mentioned also that there was a nurse fired last month for doing a post on social media about what was going on inside the hospital. And clinical staff recently held a sit-in and were told by the hospital administration that they could lose their jobs. Jared, not good times over there at Sinai Grace or in the Detroit Medical Center these days, I would guess.
Sinai Grace has a huge history of problems. It's something I've had my eye on for, frankly, years. Mm-hmm. That place has always been a place that people don't really choose to go to if they don't have to. I used to live in the service area of Sinai Grace. And it was one of the things where neighbors were just like, it's not a place you do. And I think still, there were problems before. And this kind of shows when things are under stress that something like the coronavirus exposes flaws that already exist in the healthcare system. And there are so many of them.
For sure. I want to mention that we will put a link to the Detroit News story in the show notes. But it's worth pointing out also that the DMC has had a pretty troubled history in the past few years. There was the famous scandal with dirty surgical instruments, surgical instruments that hadn't been properly sanitized, which is a huge problem, in operating rooms. You can't do that. That's how you spread infection and frankly kill people and things like that. The DMC is one of the few for-profit hospital systems here in the Detroit area. It's the only one operating in the city of Detroit that's for-profit. And, for-profit is kind of a controversial thing in the healthcare industry, especially at the hospital level, because, you're profiting off of people's sickness. We talked about recently on a show, Jer, the Beaumont CEO, John Fox, he discussed the financial ramifications of the coronavirus to health systems and how this is going to just absolutely be a major hit to their bottom line. And you and I have talked about it offline about the likely, huge jump in healthcare premiums that are going to result from this pandemic once it's over if Congress doesn't act and do something.
Well, some of those numbers look at, and reading experts, anywhere from 25 to 40% increase in healthcare premiums to deal with the additional costs of coronavirus, which is just ouch.
Yeah, if you thought healthcare was bad before, just you wait.
For sure. On a related note, we got a request from a listener who was curious why only Beaumont and Henry Ford were reporting numbers for coronavirus inpatients and infected staff members. Daily Detroit reached out to spokespeople for Ascension, the Detroit Medical Center, and McLaren, which operates hospitals in Pontiac and Mount Clemens. None of them have responded to our request for updated numbers. I will say this is actually a source of controversy and something where there have been calls for the state legislature to step in and make this happen, but they have not acted. The state says it has ordered all hospitals to share data around COVID-19, but not all are complying. Beaumont CEO John Fox, we talked about him a little bit, has urged the state to get more aggressive about requiring this from hospitals as a way to better track the outbreak and balance hospital capacity and utilization. I mean, thank you for the listener request, by the way. Those kind of stories, it's great to know what you want to know about. And it's interesting, Sven, to kind of run into the wall that it seems is not sharing numbers, which frankly is kind of terrifying in these times.
Indeed it is. The TCF Center in downtown Detroit was scheduled to accept its first 25 coronavirus patients on Friday, with the possibility of another 25 moving in on Saturday. Admissions will reportedly ramp up throughout next week. TCF crews and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers spent 11 days converting the convention hall into Michigan's first field hospitals as a way to give overwhelmed hospitals some relief from the surge in coronavirus patients. Henry Ford Health System, Beaumont Health, McLaren Healthcare, and the Detroit Medical Center are all running the TCF field hospital. On Saturday, work is expected to begin to convert the Suburban Collections Showplace out in Novi into the second field hospital. Meanwhile, out in Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan says it's postponing the opening of its planned field hospital because it's seeing, quote, a significant flattening, end quote, of COVID-19 cases in the area. The Detroit News reports that U of M planned to open a field hospital at an indoor track at its South Athletics facility, but those plans are now on hold. Washtenaw County has had 659 confirmed cases of coronavirus and 15 deaths as of Friday. That's far fewer than here in the Tri-County area.
A major Detroit area waste hauler says it's temporarily suspending the pickup of all yard waste because of a huge increase in the amount of residential solid waste people are throwing out during the stay-at-home order. GFL, short for Green for Life, said the suspension is effective starting Monday and is indefinite. The company says it needs to free up personnel to pick up garbage. Its curbside recycling program is not affected.
Plans have been announced to fill the state House seat left vacant by the death of State Representative Isaac Robinson. The 4th District, which covers Central Detroit and Hamtramck, including our beloved North End studio, will have a special primary election on August 4th. The general election will happen on November 3rd. If you're a Democrat or Republican interested in running, you need to get your paperwork filed by April 21st. Non-affiliated candidates have until July 16th. A well-known restaurant chain that had a major presence in Metro Detroit has been ended by the coronavirus. All 261 Logans Roadhouses across the country have permanently closed, including 19 here in Michigan. Logans fired almost all of its 18,000 employees with no benefits, and those employees do not have access to Cobra health insurance coverage.
Oof, Sven. I mean, this comes on the heels of things like Punch Bowl Social. We've heard word of other restaurants being very shaky right now. Now, admittedly, some of these are going to be ones that their balance sheets didn't look so great before this thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be the thing that kind of, breaks the camel's back, if you were. This is going to be a long slog for bars and restaurants. And I don't think it's going to come back full bore. Like once the stay-at-home order is lifted, I don't think we're going to be back to full bore with restaurants and bars for quite a while.
Well, I mean, let me ask you, Jer, like, once the stay-at-home order is lifted and we can't know entirely what things are going to look like by then, but how eager are you going to be to go to a crowded bar or restaurant when that's done?
I mean, not crowded ones.
We just point out that nationwide, more than 16 million workers, that's workers in general, have lost their jobs in just the past 3 weeks.
A bit of good news not related to the coronavirus. A grant of nearly $500,000 has been awarded to Wayne County to help fund the restoration of Hamtramck Stadium. The money is from the National Park Service's African American Civil Rights Historic Preservation Fund. Hamtramck Stadium was home to a number of Negro League teams like the Detroit Stars and Detroit Wolves. At least 18 Hall of Famers have played on that field.
Opened in 1930 and enhanced in 1940, the grandstands still stand. They're around the corner from Keyworth Stadium, the home of Detroit City FC. There is now enough money raised through a number of sources, including rock star Jack White, for the nonprofit Friends of Hamtramck Stadium to possibly begin work this summer on the project. The stadium isn't the only Detroit area project to receive funds from the Civil Rights Historic Preservation Fund.
Also receiving $500,000 is the headquarters of the Urban League of Detroit and Southeast Michigan on Mack, just west of Woodward in Midtown. The building was also the home of legendary Detroit architect Albert Kahn for nearly 4 decades. The Urban League does important behind-the-scenes work to support the community, and as someone who's biked by that building countless times, Sven, I'm pretty excited to see what happens with it.
Before we let you go, wanted to preview a big coming attraction here on Daily Detroit. Michigan's Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist II, is joining us on this podcast. It should be a good conversation. We'll have that in your feeds if all goes well on Saturday.
And of course, we have a lot more to share with you, and there's so much happening.
We're with you for the whole coronavirus crisis with extra episodes. And of course, we're always covering the stories that you want to know about. If you have other questions or other suggestions, hit us up at dailydetroit@gmail.com.
And of course, thanks to our members at patreon.com/dailydetroit who make this show possible. Some of our upcoming episodes are inspired by your feedback. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together.